Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Outside Insider podcast here on Philly Sports Network with myself, Liam Jenkins. It's a victory Monday. We haven't had one in what seems like forever. The Eagles were able to overcome a tremendous deficit to get their season back on track. What a game it was. We've got plenty to get through today. Reaction to just about everything that happened in those 60 minutes, from the highs, the lows, the cornerbacks, the run game, Carson Wentz, and everything in between, including your questions as well. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure you do hit that button in the description. Again, it is so cool seeing how much this podcast is growing now. We're getting a few hundred listens every time. We've got over 100 subscriptions on iTunes, but we really need your help. So if you're not subscribed, if it's your first time seeing this show, if you just kind of passively listen sometimes and turn it off, maybe it's on in the background while you do the cooking or whatever, that little show of support, even if it's just hitting the like button on YouTube, really does mean the world to me. So if you've got a spare 10 seconds, click the link in the description, tap it on iTunes, and for those of you that have tweeted me asking when's it available on Spotify or the Play Store, fear not. I've actually submitted the application to Spotify. They said it should take up to 2 or 3 weeks. I'm currently looking into how to get it on the Play Store as well. So we're getting there. You know, our reach is getting out there. We're baby stepping our way forward. But when we talk about the Eagles, when we get, straight into the nitty and gritty of this game, there's one big standout thing that you have to take away from it. And it's not the cornerbacks, it's not Carson Wentz, it's not the coaching, it's not the comeback. It's the fact this team played a full 60 minutes. Because at one point in time, it didn't look like the Eagles were going to do much. In fact, they were doing very little. They went down 19-0, got into the red zone, and there was a decision that had to be made. It was 4th and short. Were they going to go for a field goal? Were they going to go for the conversion? Peterson played it safe, took 3 points, and nobody understood why. Turns out, the Eagles won by a field goal. All because of that setup. If Peterson hadn't made that judgment then, if he'd have not been conservative and just taken the points, given that the Eagles hadn't even been inside the red zone up to that point, this would be a very different game. They'd be down 19-0, come away empty-handed. The season's in disarray. It gave them a spark of hope. And at that point, that's what the team needed, because they were at rock bottom. They come into this game fully well knowing that the division was up for grabs, that they're only 2 wins back, and that a win over the Giants, despite everything else, despite every injury, every loss, every choke lead, every mistake, every error, every criticism, every comment, that this team could come out swinging, make a statement, and put themselves back in the race for the NFC East. I know it's more of a slow jog at this point, but they're back in the hunt. And sometimes you've got to hit rock bottom to realise exactly why you started. You've got to hit a point of no return. So if you start falling out of a building, I hope that none of you ever will, but you don't stop falling until you hit something, right? Hit something that's kind of bigger than you are in that moment. Maybe you're in a career, I've had it, battling mental health, where you start slacking off a little bit because you don't feel up to a task or something like that, and eventually you hit a stage where, I'm bigger than this. Like, I didn't come all that way to stop now. I didn't come all this way, make this much sacrifice to get stopped now. Maybe it's work, maybe it's a relationship, maybe you're in a situation where, you know what, I didn't go all that way with that person to just let it go, to just stop now. There's too much there. Maybe you're in a marriage, and you're like, do you know what? We argue a lot, but we have had 15 years and 2 children. We're not stopping now. This isn't bigger than us. And that's what the Eagles did. They hit rock bottom. When they come into that game, and you look at every single statistic that came, before that matchup, where it was imperative that many thought that they got off to a fast start, because this team had 21 first quarter points in 11 games after the first quarter today. That's dismal. That is absolutely shocking. They had to get off to a fast start. They ended the first quarter 9-0 down. And then Saquon Barkley breaks off a 51-yard touchdown run, slipping through defenders, and that was thought to be the dagger. That was the one. That was the big shock. Saquon Barkley scores a touchdown. The Eagles are in trouble. They're down a lot. And then they go for 2. The Giants get cocky early on. And Malcolm Jenkins makes a vital pass breakup. And you could see what it meant. Almost in that very moment, you felt something. There was an energy around that defense where they were like, you know, it's not yet. Not yet. Yet being the word. If we're going to die, it's not today. We've got more fight in us yet. And then, right on the edge of halftime, Giants driving down the field, Malcolm Jenkins steps up again. This time, getting an interception, something that has evaded this Eagles team all year long. And the Eagles go into halftime with that momentum. They know from that moment on, we can beat this team. We can force Eli Manning into errors. The pass rush can get it done. The corners can make plays. It's not over yet. The Eagles then come out in the second half. It's a very slow scoring third quarter. They only get a field goal, but the Giants do nothing. In fact, in that second half alone, there was 56 total offensive yards. 56. Through all of the second half, despite the fact that Saquon Barkley had pretty much got... there was one stage where he'd had more offensive yardage than the entire Eagles offense combined, which I find absolutely staggering. They come out in the second half and 16 rushing yards. Really? Now, I don't know where Saquon Barkley was. Maybe he was just off, you know, playing Fortnite on the Nintendo Switch. Maybe there was something bigger at play. But something wasn't right with Saquon Barkley. He was very, very sporadic in the second half. No one really knew where he was or what he was doing. But 16 rushing yards and 40 passing yards in the second half. The Eagles defense made an adjustment. They come out swinging. And that it gave Carson Wentz a chance. And that game, if you're the Eagles head coach, had everything you needed to inject life back into that team. Adversity? Check. Didn't have any cornerbacks. So, I mean, that's just pretty adverse when going up against arguably one of the best receivers in the NFL. I mean, injured linebackers, no Jordan Hicks. That's going to suck when you're going up against Saquon Barkley, right? I mean, Carson Wentz isn't clutch. Carson Wentz is still injured. Carson Wentz is this. Carson Wentz is that. You're in a situation where you put the game on his shoulders on a 4th down conversion. And he finds Nelson Aguilar to put the team in a position to win a game-winning field goal. There's no running backs. They can't establish the run. They give it to Josh Adams. They establish the run. He has 84 yards of offense. And a rushing touchdown. On the defense, they can't get pressure all season long. They can't rock the quarterback. It's not the same unit. They miss Timmy Jernigan. Jernigan comes back, plays 30% of snaps. They sack Eli Manning twice. 5 quarterback hits. And they hold him to a touchdown and an interception and a 46 quarterback rating. You could see the momentum building. From the minute Malcolm Jenkins made that pass breakup, you could feel it. I can only imagine what it was like in the stadium, but you could see it. The emotions of the players on that field, they weren't playing empty. It looked like in the games before, they were almost running on empty. There was nothing left. There was no urgency. And I know that was talked about a lot by Jason Kelce, by Malcolm Jenkins, that the demeanour of the team had changed. Maybe they needed that. Because if you're falling, you can't stop falling if you're falling. I mean, you can take that as deep as you want, whether that's falling in love or... I mean, you never really stop, right? If it's real, you just carry on. You can't really stop that. It's just natural. If you drop a ball, it's not going to stop falling until it hits something. The Eagles hit something that game. They hit a wall. They were 19-0 down. And they fought back with everything they had. Every single thing they had. Every bit of energy was like, we're Super Bowl champions. We are too far into this to give up now. So many players have gotten hurt at our expense. They are hurt, they are suffering, they're in pain. Some may not get that long-term deal they expected. Others aren't producing as they expected. Expectations are being lowered. Fans are booing. We've come too far to lose that reputation. To lose that underdog gritty status. And now, the Eagles are underdogs once again. I mean, sure, they're 7-point favourites over the Redskins, but they're angry, they're pissed off, and they're playing with that fire that has become so symbolic with this Jim Schwartz defense. And that's exactly what they needed. Because without that, there wasn't much. There wasn't an offensive spark. They were still trying to force the ball to Golden Tate, which, let's be honest, wasn't working. Tate still had 8 targets, caught 4 passes for 30 yards. They've got to work that out still. But because they opened up the run, Wentz can then find Zach Ertz on 7 receptions for 91 yards. He can then find Olshon for a key chain-moving pass late in the game. He can find Dallas Goedert, who's really showing some upside as a receiving tight end. They were feeding off that momentum. And all it took was one play. Rock bottom. If the Giants got that 2-point conversion, and Pat Sherman knew it. Earlier, Pat Sherman knew that if he goes into that moment, and the Giants get a 2-point conversion and instantly make it a 2-possession game, what are the Eagles going to do if they can't start fast? That is the biggest kick in the teeth. And the Eagles found a way to kick back. That was the pivotal moment in my mind. And because of that, because they found some resilience, they found some anger, they found an extra bit of juice left in the tank that was just kicking around, this season's now alive. Because the Eagles are going to go into Washington, a fixture with... they're playing at home, I beg your pardon, so they're hosting the Redskins, who, let's be brutally honest, aren't really going to do much offensively with Colt McCoy. We learned that last week. Their defense is fantastic, but their current injury report, Adrian Peterson's listed on it, was before the game. Their offensive line is completely banged up. They're still missing linebackers. They're not scoring a lot of points a game either. The Redskins are only scoring 20, in fact. They're pretty much par for par with the Eagles. So if you take that, and you've got an offense that's heating up, that can run, all of a sudden, there's hope. And if the Eagles win on Monday night, and the Cowboys lose on Sunday, the Eagles are top of the division. Unquestioned. It's that simple. They're tied it. Everyone's together. The Redskins, the Cowboys, the Eagles, all of them, 6-5. That's a 3-horse race going into those final few games. And just like that, the Eagles are going to be lead contenders once again. So let me know what you think, guys. Obviously a tremendous victory for the Eagles, but don't forget as well, hit that subscribe button for the podcast. We need your support in instances like this, because again, it's your input that really does grow this podcast. So without you, there is no Outside Insider. So again, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We really, really do appreciate it. But we're going to go down now to another topic, and this is another one that I know a lot of people are excited about. And actually, it's one of the growing parts of the show, I feel, at this point. It's one of those areas where we talk about it quite frequently. And do you know what? It's not even Eagles related. Look at that for a curveball. We're going to go straight in with another former workplace story. I think we need some music for it at this point, because it is becoming so synonymous with the brand. My brand currently is emotional speeches, getting in my feelings. Probably that's about it, actually, at this stage. And now car analogies, that's the big one. That was what kickstarted it all. Although we haven't had one in a while, but we've got one coming. Don't you worry, we've got a car analogy on the horizon. And now we've got my former workplace stories, because for some reason they're just iconic. And the most iconic one I could think of, I was coming into this podcast thinking, there's nothing really that stands out because the Eagles were good and this workplace was atrocious. So instead of that, I'll just give you an actual story that's not related to anything, that's still somehow funny, right? So basically, let's set the scene. So I worked in this DIY store and we sold kitchens, right? So you can either have them designed by one of our specialists, or you can have them the ready-made, the takeaway kitchens. Okay, so they're all in boxes. You get at home, you have a hammer and you make them, and you injure yourself, you go to hospital, and then your wife will finish it, and then, because I know that, given my love life, and you end up with a lovely ready-made white crate thing that breaks after 2 weeks. So those are the two sorts of things we sell. And a customer comes into the till with a very strong, what's called a Devonian accent. So in Philadelphia or America, you've got different types of accents, right? You've got Boston and New York and Philadelphia. and then obviously you got your Texas and all the rest of them. And I'm not going to impersonate because we saw how bad those ones were. But a Devonian one takes tea and crumpets and just makes it sound very common, is the only way I can describe it. So this customer comes in and goes, "Excuse me, you know your kitchens?" And I was like, "Yeah, do you mean the takeaway ones or the designer ones?" And he went, "Your takeaway ones?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, what do you want to know?" And he looks at me so intrigued. I remember the exact look in his face. He was genuinely seeking an answer. And he went, do they come ready-made, or are they flat-packed? And at that point, it was the hardest thing not to burst into laughter. Like, what do you say to that? Like, okay, Steve, here's the thing. What we do is we actually get a crane to your house, we lift off your roof, alright, put a hook on your old kitchen, take the old kitchen out, and put the new kitchen in. Just free of charge. Don't worry about delivery. Don't you worry about that. We're all here just giving you free ready-made kitchens. We store them all in a big kitchen ready-made warehouse. Like, 10 foot each. And I was just like, that's phenomenal. That might be the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Now, again, that doesn't relate to an Eagles story, but we have had 3 podcasts in a row where the mighty Darren has ruled, and you've all given me feedback on Twitter about how iconic Darren is. So it was only fair that we included a story in this week's show as well. But back onto Eagles level content, let's talk about the run game and a car analogy, because that is what we do for the brand. So, the Eagles come into this week. We said it on Friday's podcast. They are playing the 21 ranked run defense. If the Saints can remove the run game and put it all on the shoulders of Carson Wentz and force those rookie errors to rear their ugly heads, what are the Rams going to do? What are the Texans going to do? The Eagles had to establish a run and prove that they can still run the ball, because if they didn't, it was game over offensively. But they did it. They found a way, they ran the ball, and they finally looked at the running back they were using and decided to make a decision. And we have been clamouring for this for weeks. If you've been on the YouTube channel, you've seen the film room videos. If you have been on the Philly Sports Network website, you have seen the articles where I'm pounding the table. I don't know if you can hear that, but I just hurt my hand because I've got no room on this desk and I've hit the edge of the table. I shouldn't have done that. But I've been pounding the table for Josh Adams to carry the ball. And finally, we got our wish. This was the first week in ages. I think it was 4 games where a running back has carried the ball over 10 times. That's absolutely staggering. Imagine having 4 games where a running back doesn't have more than 10 carries in the NFL. That's weird. Like, you just don't do that. It's a franchise record. So Peterson, obviously an avid listener to Darren's beautifully written career, has listened to this show and gone, do you know what? Liam's got a point. We're going to run the ball. That's the only option for it. They've not looked at tape or anything like that. They're too busy trying to implement Golden Tate. And they decided to go into their garage. Peterson looked at the cars he's got. He can see a Nissan Micra, or more commonly referred to as my mum's car, which won't get up. I'm not going to get into a rant about that car. Like, I'm really trying, but it is atrocious. Like, it is literally just a can of beans with wheels, and it will only go up a hill. You can feel it like juttering. It's so old. Like, it doesn't have air conditioning, doesn't have electric windows, and it just jutters up. Like, it will get you there. It won't do anything spectacular. It's, a bit weird and old, and the seats don't go back and forward properly, and there's no room for your legs, but it's a car, alright? Then they've got another car, and I call this one you may have guessed what the old car I was referring to was. They've got another car, which is, I would say, like a moped. And this one, it's good because you can take it on the road. Do you have mopeds in them? Oh, you call them scooters. You call them scooters, don't you? So you have a scooter, and scooters are cool, you take them to school, they get you places, they're young, they're a little bit underdoggy because everyone else has got cars and you're on a scooter, and you never wear proper motorcycle attire because it's a scooter and does 30 miles an hour and sounds like a hairdryer. And it's okay, it can get you from A to B, and it might even get you to C. Sometimes it will get you to D. It's a little bit versatile, but again, not great. And then you've got this old school, a little bit rusty, a little bit broken, but a nice, a Chevy truck. We don't have Chevy in England. I think we have a Ford Transit van, which is about as close as we get. But you've got this big, beastly looking truck, and it's grumbling whenever you look at it. And it's just sat there, and it's not really doing much. And I know at this point I'm going to get a comment saying, you take way too long to explain points, but this is for the brand. I had to get this in. The Eagles, they looked at the moped. They looked at the scooter, they looked at my mum's Nissan Micra, and they went, nah, we're going with the Chevy this week. And they hammered it to the floor, and Josh Adams went up the gut time and time again, battering everyone in his way. The offensive line blocked beautifully all game long, apart from that Jason Kelsey block that was, revoked a 57-yard touchdown. But we're not bitter about that. We're not even going to mention that. 84 yards on 22 carries. I mean, Barkley had 13, but that's because Barkley decided to He just forgot there was a second half. I think he literally just ran the first half and went, well, I've got 100 yards, I'm not going to do any more, so see you later. But Josh Adams carried the ball 22 times, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the most by an Eagles running back this year. Because the optimal number last year was around 16. Very rarely did a back not named LeGarrette Blount, I think Jay Ajayi did it once, go over 16 carries. That was the optimal. You got 16 carries from a lead back, and then you've got someone like Clement, or at that point, I guess it would have been Ajayi or Blount or whoever. Blount, wow, that's new. Or whoever it is, to take the load off. You know, you move that slice of pie around, you share the cake. The Eagles can't do that this year. So 22 carries, Josh Adams has devoured that cake. Like, he has gone straight in. He's probably got diabetes now, but the man is a monster, and I couldn't be happier for him. I really couldn't. To be undrafted, to come into this league, to battle an off-season worth of injury with his leg, where you've then got Wendell Smallwood, Darren Sproles, Corey Clement, all missing time with injury, and Adams can't get out there. He can't move out to make an impact and show the team what he can do. And that must have been so frustrating. But he did it. He got out there at 84 yards, and now the team, according to reports, and I spoke to a friend of mine earlier who said that that's definitely the case, that they really like what they've seen. And it's not just the coaching style, as in the teammates around him were egging it. There's a reason that the offensive linemen were talking to Doug Peterson and trying to extensiate the run and trying to get more out of him. It was because they believed in Adams, because they wanted to give him a shot. Because in 3 games, he had 3 20-yard runs. They wanted to get the chains moving, to take that load off Carson Wentz. The teammates believe in him. The coaches are now beginning to make him a much bigger part of this offense. It is Adams' season. Here's another funny story as well, actually. Let's dig this email out. So, it must have been maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I wrote an article on Josh Adams, and it was when he was listed on the injury report, and I essentially said that, you know, he's battled injuries throughout his college career, and he got to the NFL, and they followed him, and it's not great. And I got an email, all in capitals, by someone, I'm not going to reveal his name, that's a bit mean, but I had a feeling there may be a relation to the running back, or at least someone that's, you know, got a very specific agenda. All in capitals, saying Josh has not had a flurry of injuries throughout his college career. That was high school. Go look at his college highlights. Tell me if that's a guy with a... I mean, that doesn't tell me anything, really. That just says he's not injured. 7 runs over 79 yards to Heisman candidate. Second time all-time rusher at Notre Dame. He played preseason with second and third string offense. Notre Dame had the best offensive line in college. And it's a big ranty email. So, well done, Mr. Ranty Man. You know, if I did get my facts wrong, I sincerely apologise. I know he has had a strong injury history because he just has. Like, you can Google it. Whether it was college or high school, that could have been a typo. But the point is, he's now overcome that. And he's running like he did at Notre Dame. So thank you, Mr. Angry Shouty Man. Thank you, because you were right. Although telling me to put my sunglasses on, you probably want me to tell them to take them off. Because if I put them on, that's just going to make it harder. But it's great to see. It really is great to see Josh Adams go out there and make an impact. And again, to know that the team are happy with his performance, that his teammates are around him, they're building, they're excited. It's just really exciting to see. So a massive day for Josh Adams. I'm personally, as I said, over the moon for him. And I really hope it continues. I've got every feeling that it will. I can't imagine that it's not going to, given what we've seen so far. And that bodes very well for a Redskins defense who, let's be brutally honest here, are going to need the ball. Right? They're going to need offensive drives. Colt McCoy is not going to get the ball on the first... Actually, he might. It's the first quarter. But Colt McCoy's not going to get the ball on offense and score drive after drive after drive. So for the Redskins, their game plan is surely going to be more drives, more chance of points. That's common arithmetic. So getting the offense off the field for the Eagles is big. Because then that's less chance for Colt McCoy to do anything. So if the Eagles can sustain drives and they can go from their 20-yard line to the 20-yard line by running the clock down, keeping the ball inside those white lines, and just give the Redskins maybe 3 or 4 drives at most. If the whole point of Doug's offense, I remember someone told me a year ago, was that every drive ends in a kick. Every drive. Whether it's a field goal, whether it's an extra point, they want every offensive drive to end in one of those 2. And I know that's the goal for every offense, but some people get cute, some people just want to drain the clock, some people want to go through the air. The Eagles don't care, they just want to get every drive ending with a kick. If they can do that, if they can stick to that mentality, drive inside the red zone, end with a kick, they'll beat the Redskins. And Josh Adams, just like Corey Clement was last year for a few games, is going to be absolutely pivotal to doing that. Because he's the only back on that roster that can pick up those tough yards, that keeps those legs churning, can drive through contact and embraces it. That he's not going to get rocked back. The man is 6 foot. I'm 6'3". To think he's 6'2" charging through the trenches and he can still get skinny, that is scary. The man is a very, very scary rusher. And I think he's got a tremendous upside, and I can't wait to see what he does against the Washington Redskins. Before we get onto our final topic of the afternoon, which is, of course, my favourite, something that I'm a big fan of course, the Eagles cornerbacks, we've got to do our second big segment. And I'm not talking about Darren or his weird work stories, who's become I hope he doesn't listen to this. I don't think he's got the intellect to. That's a bit mean, but also true. I don't think he's going to do anything. But, you know, we're not talking about Darren. We're talking about Thank You Next. It's a part of the show where I answer your questions from Twitter. I put a tweet out earlier today asking for your questions about the game earlier on Sunday, and we're going to go through them. The rule is I've got 30 seconds to be thankful for my question, and then I move on. So we're going to start with Thank You Next. Johnny Scoreboards. Why doesn't Wentz throw the 50-50 to Olshon? Good question. I think a lot of it can be coming down to schematics, like is there a time and a need for it? Olshon hasn't really been able to separate much, and the Eagles aren't sustaining drives. So given a 50-50 ball, they did one on their huge third down conversion earlier in the game, but I really think at this stage they've got so much optionality. As great as Jeffrey is at doing them, they just want to get Jeffrey open and pick up the yards after the catch. So maybe we'll see more. I guess we will see more when you've got like Josh Norman or someone like that shadowing you, where you've got to have that opportunity. But as of right now, Jeffrey really hasn't been in a situation where that's become a necessity. Thank you. Next, Mookie Bet says, did Doug Peterson get a vasectomy? I wouldn't know, actually. I'm not in that industry or qualified. Maybe worth talking to someone who is. I wouldn't know where to go with that one, or why you're interested, actually. That's a little bit odd, but each to their own. Thank you. Next, Mr. Bovine Joni, which to me sounds like Mr. Bon Jovi, but got a bit weird, so fair play to the name. What do you think of the corners team on our team right now? Have you scouted prospects? Who do you think they'll go for in the draft? Great question. Obviously, there's only one or two good corners in this year's draft. I really, really like Greedy Williams out of LSU. I can't see him being around the middle of the board, though. It depends on if there's a run on quarterbacks. Like, if people like Justin Herbert and Shea Patterson, maybe not Shea Patterson, but certainly Will Greer, who I would say like is a second round pick at the minute, Ed Oliver, like names at the top of the board who could slide a bit because of quarterbacks. Like, you never know with the draft, but if the Eagles, for argument's sake, are picking 20th, or maybe let's say 17th. If the Eagles pick 17th, I don't think Greedy Williams is there, but he'll be the one I go to. The team that's in the injured ones, I think there's potential. I don't think they bring back Darby. They'll probably go a year with Sidney Jones outside CB1, Jalen Mills CB2, giving him one more year to prove himself, and then it will be inside Avonte Maddox. So I'm comfortable with that for one more year. We'll go into the cornerback talk a lot later in the season as well. Thank you. Next, Daniel McCall. Hypothetically, Eagles win against Washington and Dallas, and now their playoff hopes are alive. Who should fans expect to return from injury that will provide a boost for the team during the final stretch of the season? And partnered in with that, we're going to do a hybrid here. And Michael said anything on Matt Collins or Chris Maragos. Now, good question. As far as I'm aware, Chris Maragos had a bit of an extended injury. There's a reason he's still sat on IR. Matt Collins isn't expected to come back. I think by that time, the one name to watch out for will be Mike Williams. Now, a little birdie told me, and I don't know how much relevance this has, but week 14 is the estimate for Mike Wallace. Now, again, this isn't something I will put in an article. It's not something I want to swear by, but they're hoping by week 14 that Mike Wallace can be back. So that'll be one name. But at that point, again, you've probably got way too many chefs in the kitchen. So we'll see how he gets acclimated back. I mean, other than that, guys like Sidney Jones, you're not sure really. I think that someone like Jalen Mills or Ronald Darby's gone for the year. Mills and Jones will be the two you look for. Jordan Hicks is week to week, so maybe around the same sort of stretch. Thank you. Next, let's go to our next question. This one comes from Hurricane Will. With Josh Adams looking like the lead back, do you think the Eagles keep the J train or look into the draft for running back depth? Great question, my man. I would say it's a very interesting one. Given JJ's injury history, he's always had that concern. Since the minute he came out of college, he hit the Dolphins with the same sort of setbacks. Great back when healthy. The Eagles will either go with an incentivised deal, or they might finally have to look for a back. Donnell Pumphrey didn't work out. And if you look at that draft, the amount of running backs that went before and after Pumphrey who were effective is absolutely terrifying. So the Eagles are going to have to put a priority on the backfield at some point. This is Josh Adams' chance to prove himself not only worthy of a backfield rotation, but if he can prove himself worthy as a starter, it does mean that they can take the load off and maybe draft in a 5th round guy in the vein of Donald Pumphrey or Darren Sproles who can fill that versatile role. Thank you. Next, Daniel Ratajak. Just a heads up on that one, man. I will get to your email soon. It's been a chaotic couple days. When our starting corners come back, will Schwartz simplify his defensive scheme like he did on Sunday? It seemed to work wonders. I mean, that's a great point. I think the other way to view that lens as well is that when you look at how this team's built, the offense did the same when Nick Foles came back. You want to have the more complexity there because you can do more with it. The problem is they don't. So it wouldn't surprise me if they simplify it just for those first couple games. But overall, I think we can see much of the same. It all depends on safety depth, really. If they can get Maddox back at safety, that's going to be a very fun one. So thank you. Next, Pennsylvania. Has Carson Wentz regressed? I don't think so. I don't think regressed is the right word. I think he's coming off an ACL tear, which is normally a 2-year sort of recovery period. I think that his mechanically speaking is going backwards a little bit. It's just those rookie errors that are coming back. He's staying a bit more planted in the pocket. He's not going through his reads as fluently. He's forcing balls into windows that aren't there. But overall, I mean, it's hard to really say he's gone backwards. I think it's just a case that he hasn't gone forwards yet. He's still trying to kick back into that MVP form. Thank you. Next, Sean Doherty. What happened to Barkley in the second half? Don't get me wrong. I'm glad he disappeared, but it's just mind-boggling that he had 5 touches after a first half like he did. Well, it's a great question. I mean, what's interesting here is Pat Shermer actually told reporters after the game, saying, I think what happened was we had one series where we gave it to Wayne Gallman. He did a good job running the ball, spell him a little bit. I think Barkley had 13 rushes and 7 catches, touched the ball 20 times. And when we knock ourselves off with penalties and sacks, and then all that bad stuff, you get off schedule trying to get the ball to Saquon and Odell. I think that kind of sums it up. Think of it like the Eagles last week, you know? They were forcing the ball 8 times to Golden Tate. And Jeffrey barely touched the ball, they couldn't run. If you're fighting to conserve a lead, you should absolutely be running the ball. I don't know why they weren't. Maybe it was just a case that it wasn't the right spot, but either way, that's something that Sherman's got to look for. He says that Gorman went in there and ran the ball well, but it's the penalties that had nothing to do with the running back that really came back. They said that it doesn't matter, that it had nothing to do with the outcome of the game. We're playing him to get a couple reps here and there, which is a bit weird. Maybe he just burnt himself out after the first half. He's had a very heavy season, let's be brutally honest. It could be the rigors of the NFL taking its toll. So thank you. Next, we've got a trio of questions here from Pour the Lean in My Cup. Change the username to T and we can have a discussion. That was the nerdiest thing I've ever said. That was, oh my word. No, actually, how did the secondary fare against the passing game? We're going to get to that shortly. Do you think Bradham taking over Hicks' responsibilities make him a better linebacker? That's interesting. I'm not sure. I think Bradham is the better linebacker, full stop. I know they play different roles. I don't think he's better in the middle. He's definitely more efficient outside. But there's a reason Bradham has been paid that deal and Jordan Hicks hasn't yet, and he's in his contract year. Half of that is injuries. Half of it is just that Hicks has been a little bit inconsistent. And then his final question, have we finally found our running game? Rewind 20 minutes. Thank you. Next, thank you so much for all of your questions, guys. I love that part of the show now. It's easily becoming one of my favourites, and it's nice to get to interact with you all as well. Hopefully, if you've had your question asked, then fantastic. If you want to get your questions answered in future, simply head over to my Twitter handle at LiamJenkins21, or stay tuned on the YouTube page. I've just discovered you can put posts out on YouTube, and I keep putting pictures and polls and questions and all sorts. So stay tuned on that front, or follow me on Twitter at LiamJenkins21. We're going to move on to our final topic though, and this one isn't really a topic. I mean, I don't want to delve too much into it because I know the Eagles seem to simplify things in the second half of their defense. But a lot of people are obviously asking what happened to the Eagles cornerbacks. You know, why? What were they good? Were they bad? Let me read off these stats for you, okay? This is what I can see. I may be wrong. There may be a couple of inaccuracies. There may be targets I didn't see or anything like that. But after watching the game twice, this is what I've charted. Crayvon LeBlanc gave up 2 catches on 4 targets for 48 yards. Chandon Sullivan gave up 4 catches on 4 targets. Oh, Chandon, you little tail, you. 4 catches on 4 targets for 68 yards. Devontae Bosby, 5 catches on 7 targets for 79. I mean, that's not bad. These are backup cornerbacks. Like, come on. That is really good. Like, it's not elite, let's be honest. But, I mean, we're in a league now that is so offensively minded where pretty much every cornerback's struggling. Look at Marcus Peters. Look at some of the biggest corner names in the NFL. The only one of note that I can think off the top of my head that's actually having a good year is Richard Sherman. Most cornerbacks are really, really struggling this year. I mean, I would argue Kyle Fuller had a good season so far. I would argue that Jair Alexander has had a good season so far. There aren't many. I mean, Xavier Rhodes has had a woeful year. It's been really weird. So you think of these big names who are being paid ridiculous money, who are struggling. You've got Cravon LeBlanc giving up 2 catches on 4 targets. You've got, Borsby and Sullivan were obviously the outside guys. Sullivan was the more worrying one for me because he did give up a couple of key plays where, the one thing I'll never understand with this defense, I tweeted it during the game, if you're going to play press coverage and not initiate contact, what is the point in playing press coverage? It is literally like wearing a condom and poking a hole in it. Like, what's the point in wearing it? Like, it's going to be the same impact anyway. You have Baby Liam on the way. Or not that I've ever poked a hole in a condom. Probably shouldn't add that. That's a bit weird. But you see my point. The Eagles cornerbacks, like, if you're going to press at the line of scrimmage, if you're going to get physical at the line, if you're going to try and rough up Odell, get him off his speed, just give him a little punch, not literally punch him in the head, but give him a punch. Put your arm on him. Disrupt that route. Stand in front of him. Don't fall for the fancy feet. You stand there, you take what he's got, let him go round you. Disrupt the timing, give your pass rush a chance to get to Eli Manning. Because they weren't challenging the secondary. Odell said after the game, if it was down to him, he would have loved to challenge the Eagles' beat-up secondary. It wasn't in our game plan. Well, what was the game plan then? Check down City by the looks of it. And with that in mind, I think Jalen Mills, Ronald Darby would have given up the same sort of yardage. If we were talking the Chiefs in that situation, would have been a very, very different game. Same with the Saints, obviously, last week. The Giants really didn't reap the rewards of that. They didn't take any kind of advantage. But we've got to be positive here. The corners held their own. And in that second half, they did get physical. They did start trying to make... Devontae Bosby's tackling, in my opinion, was the best of the bunch. Maybe it's the experience paying off for him, but he really was, what I feel like, at the top of his game. That's the best I've seen. Obviously, going back and looking at pre-season and stuff as well, that's the best that I've seen Bosby play. Even when he was playing with the Chiefs. Chandon Sullivan, Cravon LeBlanc, I think can certainly hang their heads high. You wait all those years to get thinking, wait till I get my chance and I'll knock it out of the park. Like, that was their chance. Those corners, if they had an abysmal display, maybe cut and never play the game of football again. Or they'll just go on another practice squad. That was their opportunity. All 3 corners down. Practice squad, scout team, all year long. After not making the final 53, you're going, if I get my shot, when I get my shot, I will hit out the park. The minute I get that spotlight on me, I will thrive. And they did. And they held their own. And they allowed Eli Manning to have 40 passing yards in the second half. And that was a great game. A great half, at least. The first half, most of it came from Saquon anyway. But they weren't that bad. And I know they simplified it down. They tried to, make it a little bit easier. One of the big things I noticed was on... it was a key third down in the second half. And essentially, they tried to screen it out to Wayne Gorman, off the top of my head. And the Eagles played their sticks coverage, the classic sticks coverage, which everyone loves. And instead of playing 4 pass rushes, they played 3. And they dropped Camu Grugier-Hill, who is the fastest linebacker on that team, back outside. So the running back comes across the line of scrimmage, picks up the screen, and Camu bursts to that ball so quickly because he sees it coming. Now, in that scenario, if you're the Giants and you see that linebacker and you see him following the the running back, it's probably a bit of a bad sign, right? The idea for them is they want to chip underneath and gain yardage, put it in the hands of a playmaker like everyone else does against this team, It didn't work. And I think you can only be excited about that level of adjustment. That was the sort of adjustment we have not seen Jim Schwartz make all year long. All year long. He's not made those kind of, right, well, instead of never doing it again, let's tweak something. And he did it then. And it was incredibly effective. And it gave his cornerbacks a chance. And he can only be commended for that. He's come under a lot of stick this year, Jim Schwartz, but he played one hell of a second half, given that he had no cornerbacks at his disposal. And to get those guys in a position to make plays, to get Malcolm Jenkins leading that group, to allow the communication to really thrive, and let's be honest, what is a noisy Eagles Stadium, who are trying to throw off the opposition, can only be excited about it. But that is all for today's show, guys. I thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. From myself, Liam Jenkins, please don't forget to subscribe to this show. It really does mean everything to me. If you're not subscribed yet, there is a link below on iTunes. It will take you there. Spotify is coming in 2 weeks. And if you're not subscribed on YouTube, do that as well. We've actually got a new series coming out in the coming days on Madden. So you don't want to miss that. We're doing some wild things, but I promise you've never seen anything like it. It's I can't tell if it was 4:30am delusion that made me think of this idea, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So stick around the YouTube channel for that. Make sure you're visiting phillysportsnetwork.com every single day, because especially with the Flyers right now, you know, we've had Hackstall being fired, Hextall being fired. We've got our Flyers team working 24/7 to keep you up to date with that from their sources and what's going on and who's going to be taken over in the future. So stick around. Philly Sports Network, the website, phillysportsnetwork.com, our YouTube channel where you may be on now, or our iTunes page. If you're on this, hello, hope you enjoyed the podcast. If not, this hello's not for you, alright? It doesn't work like that. Hit that link, hit subscribe. I'll see you next time.